Hi everyone, as always, thank you very much for clicking on one of my videos. I'm Bob Polinsky, Master of Wine. Today's focus is going to be a video on blind tasting. Now, a couple of months ago, I posed a question on the community tab of this channel. I asked the question, what type of wine videos would you most like to see? And at the top of that list was blind tasting. So every couple of months, I'm going to work in a blind tasting event. If you recall, the one I did a couple of months ago, I struggled mightily. And if you'd like to watch that video, I'll have a link to it in the end screen of this video. Hopefully today goes a little bit better for me. As always, the wines are selected by a WSET student. He's a guy that I've been working with, helping him to get through that program. He selected the wines, he bagged them and poured them. And right now, everything is ready to go. I've been asked to identify the grape variety or varieties, vintage, place of origin, and retail price. For the purpose of this video, I'll be using something called the funneling method. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you may have seen me go through this. If not, the quick story on it is it's essentially a way of breaking a wine down into manageable components. I'll be taking a look at the way the wine appears, so sight, also smell, taste, and the tactile impression. Each of those four should tell me a little bit about what's in that wine glass. Now, generally, the range of options will be very broad to start with, but as I go through the analysis, I should be able to eliminate some things that it can't be. And at the very end, I'll take a leap of faith and I'll try to be as specific as I can in terms of identifying the wine. Okay, let's get into wine number one. This one, very pale in color, has a slight greenish tinge to it, but the light color would indicate this is a youthful wine. It doesn't appear to have any skin contact, which is going to give the wine a little bit more of a deeper color in many cases. If there is any skin contact, it's minimal, but it does have a slight greenish tinge, and just by the appearance, I'd say this wine is no more than 2 or 3 years old. Aromatics are quite pronounced. There's no alcoholic heat to this wine. The alcohol does seem to be quite low. If that's the case, it's making me think it's coming from more of a cooler growing region. There is some of that herbal aromatics to it. It smells a little bit like tarragon, a little bit like fresh cut grass. It has a bit of the pyrazine note, that bell pepper, capsicum characteristic to it. But very bright, fresh, clean, all primary fruit in terms of the aromatics. On the palate, wine's very pretty. There's some moderate weight to it, but it's clean, bright, zesty, good presence up front and the mid palate. It falls off a bit on the back palate. In terms of grape variety, I'm actually not going to do a whole lot of funneling. Something comes to mind immediately, and the aromatics and the taste profile support it. I'm thinking this is Sauvignon Blanc. That pyrazine note really is a key indicator. Also that tarragon and cut grass characteristic, very much in line with a good number of Sauvignon Blancs. Going through some of the other options that it could be, maybe something a little more obscure, maybe something from Italy or Portugal. But again, the aromatics really don't support that. I'm going to Sauvignon Blanc, and I feel quite confident about that. In terms of place of origin, cooler climate, and this doesn't seem to fit many New World places. I can't picture anywhere in California where this could come from, or Washington State. Australia, maybe a place like Adelaide Hills that has some coastal influence, but again, the alcohol level on this seems a bit low for a place like Adelaide Hills. Doesn't have the aromatic profile that I would expect with many places in New Zealand. Certainly a place like Martinborough or Marlborough, I would say not a chance. Hawke's Bay, completely different aromatic profile than what this wine has. Maybe from the south of New Zealand, possibly. Some of the coastal areas in Chile come to mind, a place like Leyda. But again, I would expect this to have a bit more alcohol, a little more intensity in terms of the aromatics. I keep going to Europe on this. There's two places that my mind goes to, and one is up in the northeast part of Italy, a place like Alto Adige, cool climate, fairly long growing season. Oftentimes, the wines tend to have a good aromatic intensity. There's an elegance to them, possibly Alto Adige. Um, Loire comes to mind as well. I don't think this has quite the concentration and weight that you would find in Pouilly Fume or Sancerre. And certainly with the 2020 vintage from that area, the wines had higher alcohol. They were very ripe, very full. This doesn't have any of that. Um, but I am thinking maybe it's one of the outlying areas in Loire. It's a bit of a flyer, but I'm going to say this is Sauvignon Blanc, Loire, Menetou Salon, very recent vintage, 2021. 2021s generally have lower alcohol, more elegance. All of that supports what's in this glass. So that's what I'm going to go with. Okay, now for the reveal on wine number 1. This is tricky. Okay. This is a Sauvignon St. Bris. This one's a bit of an anomaly. The producer name is Gabrielle Vivian. Maybe it's Vivian Gabrielle. I'm not sure which. It's a 2021 vintage and shows a retail price of $20. But St. Bris, this is a place in the northern part of Burgundy that actually grows Sauvignon Blanc. It's a region that is not all that far from places like Chablis, not all that far from Champagne. It's a bit east of Loire, where I put it. This is a tricky one. I tell you, Sauvignon St. Bris, maybe I have one a year. Some of these wines are actually quite nice. I think this is a good example. I think this is a solid wine. I got to say, St. Bris didn't even come to mind for me. This one's out there. Yeah, hit the price point, hit the varietal, place of origin, no. And the vintage in this is actually quite clear. What's the alcohol? Oh, the alcohol on this is 12.5. That's quite low in today's wine world, and it really shows in this wine. It's all that pretty aromatic primary fruit. Okay, off to wine number 2. And this one, again, quite pale in color. I don't see any of the greenish tinge in this wine. It's probably tough to see in the video, but there's actually some very tiny bubbles in this wine. It has a minute amount of CO2, which would lead me to indicate that the wine was bottled when it was very young, really fresh. I don't think this wine is very old. I'm going to say, again, 2, maybe 3 years old. Aromatics completely different than the first wine. This is more of that stone fruit, more of that peachy apricot character, a bit of a green apple note to it. Not getting the citrus character, not getting that herbal characteristic to it. Color's quite pale. I don't think this has any skin contact, or if it does, it's minimal. Also, don't believe there's any use of oak in this wine. This is all primary fruit. It seems very fresh, very bright. On the palate, mid-weight. Alcohol level is not very high in this wine. I'm going to say 12.5, maybe 13%. I won't say it's nondescript, but it's also not uber expressive. It's fresh and bright, and it has that clean character, but there's no grape variety that just jumps out at me. Going through some of the things that it could be, at first I thought maybe some lightweight version of something like Gewurz or Tarantus, but aromatics just don't support that. Something like Chenin Blanc, perhaps, but typically they're going to have a little bit more of those honey aromatics. This wine does not have that. Even for a brief moment, I thought to myself, perhaps this could be some sort of unoaked version of Chardonnay. I don't think so. Something like Sauvignon Blanc, absolutely not. Riesling, I would expect a little bit more acidity, a little brighter, fresher characteristic to it. Going through all these indigenous grape varieties in Italy and Portugal, there's a lot of them there, and going through that mental Rolodex, I think I have it on my mind a little bit because I was there in both places not too long ago. But I don't think so. This reminds me of nothing that I tasted in Portugal. And in Italy, possible, but I don't think so. Thinking of places around the world that it could be, some New World regions, I really can't place this anywhere in places like the US, Chile, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand. You know, there's some cooler growing areas in some of those places, but I don't think that. I don't think so. This wine has a soft, elegant, refined character to it. Takes me back to somewhere in the old world. Thinking somewhere in Europe. Um, a bit like the first wine, I went down the path of Italy and France. I'm going there again. I can't put my finger on a specific varietal. So as I'm thinking through this, something like Pinot Gris or Pinot Bianco perhaps comes to mind for a place like Alto Adige. I would expect the quality level to be higher than what this is. I expect it to have a little bit more aromatic intensity, a little more nuance. This is a little more one-dimensional. Um, I'm going to a place like Alsace, and since I can't put my finger on a specific grape variety, I'm going to say this is a blend. Some of the entry-level blends from Alsace, you'll find things like Pinot Blanc, Pinot Auxerrois. I think it may be something like that. It does have perhaps just a little hint of sweetness to it, just at the level of detection. A good number of Alsatian wines will have some level of sweetness. So I'm going to say this is an Alsatian blend. Recent vintage, 2020, price point not all that high, maybe a $12, $13, more of an entry price point. Solid, good wine, but nothing overly exciting. Okay, now for wine number two, I'll pull this out of the bag. We have a, interesting. Okay, this is Vin Beat. Not sure of the pronunciation. If I'm wrong, please someone correct me on this. Uh, this is a cooperative, and it's German from the Pfalz area. Weissburgunder, Pinot Blanc indicates Trocken, which would be the dry style. I would debate that. I don't think this is quite Trocken. I think the level of sweetness is at that point where you can detect a bit of it. You'll notice it has a screw cap, and that might be the reason why it had a little bit of the CO2 yet. Retail price shows $17. I think that's a little bit high. That's US dollars. I wouldn't be too thrilled if I paid 17 for this. I think the wine is maybe worth about 12 or so. Solid wine. I missed it. I said Pinot Blanc at one point, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't quite identify this wine as being Pinot Blanc. But all things considered, I suppose not terrible. Now off to the third and final wine. Let's see if I can end on a strong note. Again, pale color on this. All three of these wines have been very pale in color. This does not have any of the CO2 notes that I indicated in the second wine. It doesn't have any of that green tinge, a little bit of a pale yellow, and it has almost a bit of a bronze color to it, which is a little bit different and unusual. Aromatics, quite herbal. It has this characteristic that reminds me of basil, maybe a bit of sage. Not a lot of fruit character, maybe a little bit of citrus note to it, but it's more underlying. It's more herbal versus citrus or any other type of fruit. I don't believe this has any oak to it. I think the wine is very, very youthful. I'm going to say the wine, this is one I feel quite confident on. I'm going to say maybe a year old. I'm going to say this is a 2022 vintage. In terms of varietal, there's nothing that really jumps out of the glass with a clear marker to a varietal. This could be something a little esoteric and out there. It might be one of these indigenous grape varieties from a place like Portugal. Could be something from Spain. I don't think the alcohol level on this is all that high. Maybe 12, 12.5, certainly no higher than that, which would make me think it's coming from either a very cool place or perhaps it's just harvested very early before the sugar level amps up. On the palate, this is a wacky wine. I'm feeling good about the vintage. Beyond that, having a tough time with a varietal. I'm going to say this is probably a blend, something that's quite esoteric and out there. Um, Place of origin, I can't see this being anywhere from the New World unless this is someone doing something completely off the grid. If it is somewhere in California, Australia, places like that, South Africa, it's someone doing something really, really different and out of the norm. So I'm going to hedge my bets on this. I'm going to put this one in Europe. Um, I'm thinking Portugal and one of the more coastal areas from Portugal, which is going to have more of a cooler influence, cooler growing season, a bit lower alcohol levels. You know, there's something about this that also reminds me a little bit of some Côte d'Aron Blanc that I've had. I love Côte d'Aron Blanc. Alcohol seems a little bit low for that. Generally, the southern part of the Rhone, longer growing season, typically higher alcohol levels. Same would hold true for the Languedoc, generally higher alcohol levels as well. So I don't think so. My final on this, I'll say this is a 2022 from Portugal, one of the coastal areas, maybe an area like Barada, for instance. Uh, a blend of grape varieties. Don't know what it is. In terms of price point, this is I think quite solid. Price point maybe in the low teens, uh, and for that money, I'd be really happy with it. If it was even $15, $18, something like that, I think that would be fair as well. So that's what I'm going to go with. And now for the third and final wine. This is a 2022 Lorette Côte de Tau. This is down in the Languedoc area, the southern part of France. It's made from 55% Picpoul, 45% Tourette. The former is a rather common grape variety down in that part of the world. Tourette, not so much. I haven't thought about that grape variety in a long time. I believe there's also a red version of it. It's quite an ancient grape variety, oftentimes used in field blends. I believe it also has a link to the vermouth industry as well. Alcohol level quite low, 12%. Interesting, all three wines today had fairly low alcohol levels. It's from a cooperative called Cave de Florensac. Very common in that part of France that cooperatives play an active role. Many small producers who don't make wine just feed their fruit into a central winemaking facility. Shows a retail price of about $15. And I've got to say, for that money, I'd be quite happy. This one took me to task. I put it in Portugal, and I obviously missed that. I feel a little bit like the fish on the label right now. But I thank you so much for sticking around. Blind tasting, always a humbling experience. If you have some comments on it, please post it down below. I try to follow up on each and every one of those comments. I hope to see you again before too long. And until next time, cheers.